reality. So the population itself is already in a fantasy narrative. So if the surveillance state of China occupies like this the powerful position of artificial intelligence, like how does this all fit in together? Make something of my question there, Dan.
So I think you had a good point earlier. We talked about outside of America, nobody really believes America's number one and China's number two economically. And I think if you talk to the Europeans, it's becoming obvious. China is going to make 1 billion tons of steel this year. 1 billion, we're going to make 88 million. They make 10 times the amount of steel we make. But talk about technology, artificial intelligence. You know, they had their Sputnik moment on artificial intelligence when the AlphaGo artificial intelligence program that was done out of London beat the top Go player. So Go is, chess is the Western game, Go is the Chinese game. Go chess they see is very rude, very Western, it's very frontal attack. We're going to attack you, we're going to conquer you. The game of Go is played with black stones and white stones, and you slowly, patiently try to encircle your opponent. So they're big into Go. When the top Go player was beat by the artificial intelligence, 288 million people in China watched it live, and they were shocked. And within a month, the Chinese government came out with an artificial intelligence plan. This is 2013. Said we're going to be number one by 2020, which they are today, and by 2030 we're going to dominate. Half of all venture capital today in AI is in China. Okay, 400 unicorns globally. These are companies with $1 billion market cap. Not all AI, obviously, but most are tech. 206 are Chinese, over half. 147 are American, and that leaves about 50 something for the rest of Europe and some other countries, Japan and others. But it's basically, we're in a tech development is all US and all China now, and China's winning. How far ahead are they? Can you quantify it? Maybe 3 to 5 years. AI is basically the electricity of the future. It's going to disrupt every industry. Okay, it's going to be like an electrical grid. Every industry will take AI, machine learning, and radicalize it. So in that report I talked about, the Chinese came out with, they reference hundreds of industries that need to bring AI in. So health, what are we talking about? Healthcare, radiologists disappear. AI is going to be better. Autonomous driving is an AI application. So the list goes on and on. Where they stack up is some of the best AI now globally. That connects in with 5G, because 5G is the network that carries the AI applications. Everything's hooked up to sensors. So China, as you mentioned, Russia, Putin, they have all recognized, and I think Putin, to quote him, said something like, whoever controls AI is going to control the world. And it's that important of a technology. China's throwing, $1 trillion behind AI. AI industrial parks we talked about. So they are moving rapidly. They have the engineers. All of the AI algos are pretty much already done. Like the real hard learning for deep learning algos are done. Now you just need application. You need all these entrepreneurs to get it out into the industrial spaces. So we talk about industry 4.0. You're talking about factories that are completely automated, completely networked. Every piece of equipment has sensors on it. It's all categorized in real time. But now where we're starting at in the U.S., oh yeah, our factories are gone. We shipped them all overseas. We don't have anything. So this is now we have a big, in the United States in particular, we have a big catch-up phase to go through. Germany, I think they kept their industrial base. They're still at the top of the leaderboard there, so they can adapt AI technology quicker. But yeah, it's the most important technology, along with 5G going forward, and then maybe quantum, which China is also outspending us probably 10 or 20 to 1.
Yeah, you mentioned the fascination with Go versus chess. And of course, there are many differences culturally between East and West. And for China, now that they're in its emerging superpower, for them, it's like a return to form, because they were, for thousands of years, the dominant economy in the world. And the United States is kind of like a startup that burnt all of its money and went bankrupt. And it lasted a couple hundred years versus 5,000 years in China. So I think, and so culturally, they have so much to draw on that to buttress this nationalism, and it's very fierce in China, as you've talked about before, and they have good reason to be proud of an amazing culture. I wanted to ask you on the technology front, what about solar energy? Because it seems like solar, I saw that ExxonMobil talk about differences in how people do business. So in America, ExxonMobil, they just announced that they're laying off 15% or so of their workforce, huge number of job losses, because they want to save the dividend, right? So the workers are going to be thrown into the street, and the shareholders and bankers and the kleptocrats are going to keep their dividend, right? It shows you the priorities. They're willing to sacrifice a huge number of folks, and especially in an age when interest rates are zero, and they could have easily just borrowed that money to pay the dividend, right? So it has such contempt for the average person. But what about solar energy? I would imagine, how's that playing out in China?
Well, there's 60 to 70% of the solar, manufacturing market. They have the latest technology. Your point on the oil industry, or just American capitalism in general, it's finance capitalism, right? It's shareholder over everybody. It's over the workforce. It's treating fixed assets as a plague. Don't spend money. Don't invest anything. Just flip it. Flip it on paper. Flip those profits. We subsidize sports stadiums, and they subsidize chip plants. That's the last technology frontier we had with NVIDIA and companies like this. They're going to get overtaken by Huawei and other companies. They're just pouring hundreds of billions of dollars behind chip fabrication. But the whole system of our capitalism, and I'm a fierce proponent of capitalism, but we've turned into some type of dark finance crony capitalism that is not working. It doesn't produce benefits for people or even the companies long term. A lot of these companies get spun by private equity companies 5, 6, 7 times and left as shells only to just collapse later. Toys R Us. I mean, you can name 20 companies, 50 companies that have been destroyed by private equity that are getting access to free money, right? So the system in the United States is completely wrong at this point. We need to step back and take a total look at it.
And so, what about the solar technology? However, you said the AI is the electric grid of the future. So, is that going to be because I know they do have a problem with energy independence in China. Yeah. So, do you think you're going to have a more decentralized, distributed sort of solar system there? I know they're also building small nuclear power plants. What's their energy mix there? Because you can't be a superpower without being energy independent.
Yeah, you have to be energy independent, and you have to, at this point, you have to have a mix of technology. So nuclear, they're obviously building more nuclear than the rest of the world combined. I think they have 48 today. They're building another 24 nuclear power plants. We in the U.S. have about 96. We actually have quite a few nuclear plants. The problem in the U.S., they're all 35 years old now. We've built nothing new. China's got the latest, most safest nuclear grid now coming online. Solar, they're 60 to 70%. They're still, unfortunately, they're still building 3 new coal plants a week or a month. It's just some crazy number. Their carbon emissions are off the chart. Literally at this point, the U.S., our carbon emissions are down about 40% in 10 years because of LNG. We basically switched from coal to LNG. Coal's no longer profitable. You can just let it die. Solar is making leaps and bounds. I think that's going to be the technology, but it's not always 100% efficient because of the sun is not 100%. But there's plenty of energy coming from the sun. As long as the technology curve continues upward, it's all going to be solar. Eventually, you're going to be able to, it's probably going to be a mix of solar and nuclear. China's rapidly moving down the phase, in both pathways.
All right. Well, Dan, thank you so much for blowing our minds with some information about China, because, here in America where we are, we don't hear much about the outside world, from our news sources here.